Welcome back to another episode of the Triple J Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Rasmussen, and back with another episode, trying a different angle on the camera here tonight. Bringing back a repeat guest for Season 2, Eric Kronberg, longtime MLS goalie for the Kansas City and Montreal ball clubs, and a former roommate of mine at Fresno State, longtime goalie, and entertaining friend of mine. We are kickstarting several projects, and we are going to be bringing on some more former MLS players to talk more about the interesting world of soccer, as well as a beginning of a foray into multiple sports while staying heavy, tried and true with my basketball roots as well going forward. So Eric and I jump back in, talk a lot about the economics and the comparative professional sports with soccer and the MLS, and kind of how it's evolving in relationship to the NBA, NFL, and MLB collective bargaining agreements and average salaries. It's an interesting discussion. So, without further ado, Eric Kronberg back for another episode and appearance here on Season 2, Triple J Sports Podcast, coming at you now. Welcome back to another episode of the Triple J Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Rasmussen, and bringing back my longtime friend, former roommate, and retired MLS goalie, Eric Kronberg. Welcome back, my dude.
What's up, man? Good to see you again. I mean, I feel like I was just here. I feel like you don't have many friends.
This is a fact. And I'm also running out of funds to pay people to pretend to be my friends. So the two together are kind of the problem.
I'm cheap,
and I think you spend all your money on everything but Wi-Fi, since it took us all of an hour just to get your Wi-Fi to work.
I just like the sound of the dial-up.
Hey, nothing like that old school dial-up noise waiting for that phone to connect, and kind of like waiting for a goal to be scored in soccer. It's the same level of speed.
It can, that's just my style. I like, slow but once I'm online, I make it count. Just like soccer, right?
You only got one channel open. All the family has to suffer while the internet is fully occupied by your one device.
Yeah, this is it right now. The rest of the family's downstairs playing Yahtzee or something. I don't know.
Playing Yahtzee, using a generator for the power that it took to functionally support that as well. Yep. No doubt, man. Well, glad to be back doing this, man. And we were talking a bunch offline. Actually got some great stuff to hold you ransom and hostage with in the future. But we have some additional guests and some former teammates of yours that we are going to be able to be kind of digging into in the future, and without going too far ahead into that, and kind of focusing on like the soccer theme and the general conversation you and I have been having over the last few weeks about just kind of behind the scenes with MLS and how it's evolved, but how it kind of stacks up and compares to like the NBA and NFL and MLB. Like there's a lot of differences in terms of how much money you're making or what that career looks like in the different sports in their pseudo minor league systems or pro teams. One of the key things that you talked about was just like early stage MLS playing careers, as they were building the money, much like we hear now with the WNBA. You're playing as much for the love as you are for the paycheck in the early stages. How do you think it's evolved? Like, what is it like today, and how does that compare to when you were a active and successful 14-year pro in the MLS?
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot different now. I'm not as into the weeds in terms of like the development and the pay structure anymore. I think it's gotten a lot better. But when I first joined the league, they had something called the Reserve League, and basically, they had two teams, roster of 28. Sometimes they added guest players and stuff like that. But the bottom maybe 6 or 7 players on the roster were these kind of developmental contract players, and they were really designed to be for local players. But the teams wanted to get the best players they could, so they just draft players on these developmental contracts, and that's actually how I started my career. And I think it was 2006 when my first year, and I was a third string goalkeeper. And I think, the pay was 24, 28 grand a year, something like that. So really not enough to sustain a lifestyle. And so I had to, coach and I coached I coached high school soccer as assistant. I coached all sorts of individual sessions and stuff like that to try and stay afloat. And so I was one of those developmental players, but, I came from California. So I lived with 2 other guys. They were both rookies as well. One of them came from Cal with me. His name was Tyson Wall. He's an awesome guy and a good defender and had a nice career in the league as well. But fortunately for me, my first year, I actually got to go on loan. I went to loan for the league below MLS. It was the USL. And I played for a team out of Miami, called Miami FC. And Miami obviously has the Inter Miami now with Messi and Busquets and Jordi Alba and that whole team, which is just won the MLS Cup, which is really cool. But back when I played, I actually played with a Ballon d'Or winner. His name was Romario, and he was like 40 years old, but and pretty slow, and but also one of the best players ever to play. So it was pretty cool to play with him. He still was probably the leading goal scorer in the league and stuff like that, and incredible finisher. And that was a great experience, but I was luckily able to supplement my income with playing on 2 teams at once with that loan. They both were able to pay me. So I made a little bit more money that first year. But, it was hard being one of those developmental players and being on the reserve team and stuff like that. Those first couple years, it was, you're not making as much as you think. And it's kind of funny. You're making less than, I don't know, some pretty low income jobs. And then you go off and you sign autographs. It's like, okay. You don't really feel like that level should match, but, it was a great experience. It was fun, and I'm happy I did it. But it definitely wasn't as glamorous as people thought it was.
That I think it's an interesting thing. I know when you and I were playing, as freshmen, or both roommates as freshmen, and I was playing a couple minutes a game first part of the season in basketball, it would be the same thing. I'd go around signing autographs, and I'd be like, "Why do you want my autograph again?" Like,
all right.
I know I'm still just a kid that was in high school a few months ago, and that guy's getting drafted in the first round. Chris Jeffries is who you want, or Melvin Ely, or Damon or Noel, like Mustafa, me.
Yeah.
And, we used to joke, it's just because I'm one of the 2 white guys doesn't mean I'm special. But it was you and I used to joke about it. It's weird that 4 months earlier, I was a high school kid that didn't know where I was necessarily going to go play. And now you're signing autographs. That was interesting for the MLS. I think just like in a lot of sports, it's still the pinnacle of the sport. It's still what kids idolize wanting to do, and the money ends up following. I don't know what the average, pay is off the top of my head for MLS players completely, but I have to imagine from the evolution standpoint that it's significant. The significant improvement that you're seeing, right, has changed the game, and with generations of growing up around the sport. Do you do you talk to guys that are still playing today, or connect with guys that are active at any point, and kind of talk about not just the the economics, but like the travel, the way that, you know, the hotels, the food, the training staff, all that stuff starts to evolve. And anything that you've been able to kind of identify just over the last, you know, X number of years since you retired?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't talk. I'm in a fantasy league with a bunch of my old teammates and stuff like that, fantasy football league, and I just got booted from the playoffs, so I'm out. You know, I'm trying to fight for not last place now. But a couple of those guys are still in the league and still playing and stuff, but I really don't get into it with them in terms of, you know, what the league is like now. But I can definitely say from when I ended to when I started, the league had totally changed, and I know that it has progressed significantly since when I retired in 2017. I mean, when we first started, we were, you know, flying every flight was a Southwest flight. We'd have to kind of walk around the airport, and we'd have middle seats because there's so many of us, and you know, we'd stay in very average hotels and stuff. And then with every CBA, it got better and better. You know, our leadership would represent us well, and the pay got better, and some of the incentives got better and stuff like that, and the travel got better. I think once David Beckham came in, and you know, he was kind of like a celebrity. He really couldn't just fly commercial like everyone else. They started making some changes. I'm pretty sure pretty much all the flights now are chartered and stuff like that. So you know, they're able to avoid some of the masses. I'm sure, you know, Messi's not flying Southwest like we were back in the day, but I don't know. I'll have, you know, when Kevin's on, and well, I shouldn't mention that, but he's got some stories that we can talk about later. Yeah, sorry, but it was definitely a challenge. It's not what you'd expect. But at the same time, you get to play soccer every day, and it was a lot of fun, right? So there was a total juxtaposition between, you know, your lifestyle versus, you know, getting to play, and then you're in a stadium and stuff like that. But throughout my career, I mean, I went to Cal, and Cal was a great soccer school, but we didn't necessarily get big crowds. There's some soccer schools that pack their little stadiums and stuff like that, and we got, you know, a couple hundred per game, and maybe we get 1,000 people at our playoff games and stuff like that. But it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like we're selling out a stadium or anything. And then when I first started with Kansas City, we played at Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs play, and I mean, we get 10,000 people in Arrowhead, which seats 90,000 people or something like that. So it just felt like no one was in there. And then that was probably my first 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 years. And then we got bought by a new ownership, and that was kind of the turning point for us. We actually played Manchester United in Arrowhead, and that's like the first time Kansas City really came out and filled Arrowhead, and that was a really fun game. We actually beat them. We won 2-1. I played in the second half of that game. We had a 2-1 lead going into halftime, and I come in at halftime. And we also had a red card, so we were playing down a man. So I'm like, great, I'm about to get shelled in the second half against Manchester United, and they were a very good team. You know, played against Nani and I think Paul Scholes played. I think Giggs might have played. There's a bunch of like legends that were from those incredible Manchester United teams in the 2000s that played in that game. But I think they might have had a night out before, and it was also like over 100 degrees and humid on that day. So, you know, while I think I was going to get shelled in the second half, I think they were pretty tired and slow, and it just looked like a slow game. But we ended up holding on, and I think that was a really turning point for Kansas City. Then we ended up getting our own stadium and stuff, and while our stadium was being built, we had to like switch from Arrowhead to this little like minor league baseball stadium. So for like 3 years, we played in this minor league baseball stadium, and baseball stadiums are always interesting, especially as goalkeepers, because the outfields are north to south or east to west. So there's always, you know, a half that you're just getting blasted right in the eyes of the sun. And then there's a half where you're good. So you want to like make sure you get the good half because often the games are happening, you know, at 7 o'clock, right when the sun's setting. So that was one of those stadiums, and that was a wild time. But finally, we get our own stadium, and it was Livestrong. Remember Lance Armstrong's company?
Livestrong,
right? Yeah, so it was Livestrong Park, and it was really cool, and then really cool name. But then Lance Armstrong had his whole
Livestrong. It became Livestrong.
Yeah, so they dropped that name, and now I think it's Children's Mercy. But I mean, once we got that new stadium, it was a game changer for us. I mean, I think they sold out for like 2 or 3 years in a row, and we won the championship in there in 2013 and stuff like that. So the evolution from going from being a nobody into winning a championship with the team and really being celebrated by the community, and now it's like one of the top soccer hubs in the United States. They're hosting a bunch of World Cup games, which I think is going to be fantastic. They're in June though, so they might be warm. So I hope the players get used to that. But it's really turned into an incredible soccer city, and I think the new ownership has done a really nice job of promoting the game and building a winning team. And Peter Vermees was the head coach there for a long time. I learned a lot from him, and he was a great coach. He was hard on his players and had high standards, but we were successful, man. And we had a play style, and I feel like his play style evolved, and maybe the league kind of evolved out of his play style and adapted to it. So he didn't have as much success towards the end, but we had some great teams and some great cultures. And when I was there, I was, we always had success. So it was a fun team to be part of. And I had a great experience there.
Well, I mean, this is the common conversation that I hear. I hear it a lot with the sports that I'm really tapped into, right? NBA, NFL, the generations before, like you're talking about what Michael Jordan did for the NBA to set the compensation and the pay structure and the CBA that subsequently leads to these deals with guys getting paid astronomical amounts of money and then not playing, and the guarantees. But it's the outperformance of the contract that leads to the ability to create that, right?
For sure.
So, and you guys built that. So I looked it up while you were talking, and there's a couple mixed numbers, but I see average compensation between $350,000 and $360,000, and others that show closer to $500,000 as the average salary for the MLS as of 2025. Talking about like the median being $339,000. That is reflective of a very different number from like NBA and NFL, where their numbers are much higher, especially the NBA. Baseball guarantees are off the charts. Yeah. But it's really cool because to like listen to this, and I think bringing it up with you and the MLS, you were a part of the generation that outperformed and had to grind through where the glamour of the money wasn't the pay, but without that, the MLS doesn't exist at the level that it currently operates today. And ironically, I think you're seeing a lot of that with like college sports, with NIL, and a lot of the things that are now the wild, wild west for coaches. And when you and I played, can you imagine how much different it would have been for us if NIL existed and the recruiting and the transfer portal with our experiences in college, right? Like it very different, I mean, if I'm can make a story about me moment kind of deal, right? Like I never wanted to leave Fresno. Playing for Coach Tarkanian was an awesome year as far as playing for a legend. Coach John Welch was, who recruited me, and I was learning more about how to become a great one-on-one player and use my angles and my ability to shoot to help me develop my game than I had really ever learned. Coach Tark retires. I start looking. I looked at schools, didn't want to sit another year, like, the whole punishment of transferring, sitting out a year. All those rules are so different. Like, I would have picked a school, probably more different roster, and not that I regret it, but just like how it would have been different, right? Like,
Yeah.
I would have had a different selection of schools. Then when the coaching shift happened with who I committed to changed, I wouldn't have stayed at that school. I probably would have gone to another coach that had recruited me, because those options and that flexibility exists. And I look at that like there's a good and bad to that equation in the college environment. Like, I learned to kind of battle through a very different environment as an athlete and a coach. Not necessarily, I played 1 year for a coach that recruited me, and other than assistants like that. And you went through this insane evolution, as we covered in our, your first appearance here, about a program going away, buying a year, and staying. Today, kids don't play 17 minutes instead of 14, and they can go, well, I'm not playing enough, I can transfer. They can get offered money. It's just a wild deal to me that I think, like, having to go through the adversity and being like, I'm not getting what I want, I have to put my head down and grind and make the best out of this to become better, is not really the best course or path for a lot of guys given their options. What I look at, and I love, that's one of the reasons I love this this show when I talk with coaches, is it's a very different platform. If you looked at your career, how do you think it would have gone differently? Like, if you had the transfer portal in a way, now you had flexibility to go places because of the program, but how do you envision your career if you kind of play imagine this or imagine that for a minute? How do you think it would have evolved in today's rules?
That's a great question, man. Like, what would I have done? I think once I got to Cal, I think I was very happy and we were a successful program. I was learning a ton. I was at a great school and I had the best goalkeeper coach in the country, I think. So I was playing, right? So all of that was great.
Roommates with me anymore. So that was the really crappy part, was that you didn't get to kick my ass in Moose every night, and that was my ability to have a sound evening.
I was finally able to get away from you. No, man, you're the one that left first, dude. You left. So
this is true. Well, I wasn't. I left, but I wasn't. I was kind of like, you call it leaving, or told I wasn't super welcome, or so.
Yeah, I mean, Fresno, I don't know if much would have changed for me, honestly. I've always been kind of a stick it out type of person and a pretty loyal guy and wanted to stick it out. Maybe, I mean, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that the guy in front of me when I was a freshman was a junior. I knew he had 2 years left. So it's not like, I didn't, I would have changed my decision after my first year. Maybe I would have, I don't know. But at the same time, like, I think the risk, there's a lot of risk in the transfer portal now, because when players decide, because I was also a coach, I coached at the University of Portland, and the transfer portal was active, right? And there's hundreds of players pop up, as soon as that transfer portal opens up, and there's some good ones and some bad ones and some ones, and a lot of them think they're better than they are, right? And that's a big thing with college athletics. And if you're a top program, you're recruiting players that think they're going pro, and they think that they're better than they are, and it's tough. I mean, we went through this University of Portland, like, we recruit the best players in the country, and they come in and they think that they're going to start and play every game, play every minute, and then get drafted in the first round. And it's like all of the recruits think that, and every year,
there's only one of you at each position that gets to actually realize that.
That's right. And so you have to be, pretty special to be able to actually do that. But at the same time, like, you have to be, if your journey's a little bit slower where you might redshirt or something like that, that's a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of players. And a lot of players will say the only way I can, get better is if I'm playing. And I don't think that's necessarily true, man. I redshirted 2 years and still went pro, right? Like, I think that what gets you to where you want to go is not necessarily the minutes that you're playing. It's the minutes that you've earned. And you have to earn those minutes by out competing everyone every day in training. And when you get your moment, you got to shine in that moment, right? So a lot of these players, they just get kind of fed up with the situation they're in, and rather than grinding out an extra year or something like that, they transfer. And some of them land on their feet and they go and have success. But a lot of times we looked at the transfer portal, and there's some players that we recruited before, and now they're they're almost like washed up, and now they're on the transfer portal, and it's like we're not really interested in that player. The players we were looking for were the players that kind of outgrew a system, right? So if you're the best player on your team and you're just on a bad team and you want to go find success, like that's a player that's interesting, right? But we're not necessarily looking for the players that just get impatient and want to jump on the transfer portal to find greener grass, and I think that the danger of that is a lot of the coaches aren't looking for those players. And so you can jump on the transfer portal and then burn your bridge with the school you're at, with the team you're on. And now you're on the transfer portal, and then you don't get picked up, and now you're done, right? Or you have to go play at a lower level. And that happens a lot too, like you think, I'm going to go in the transfer portal because I was heavily recruited. And then, you don't do well in your first year, or maybe you redshirt or something like that, and you jump on the transfer portal. Coaches see that you're an impatient person, and
Yep.
It can be a bit of a red flag. And so, you might not get it as recruited. Like, all these schools were interested in me a year ago or 2 years ago, and now they're not interested in me. What's going on? And then you end up having to settle for a school that you probably wouldn't want to settle for, because, some of those doors have closed on you.
See, and I think it's interesting. Like, I look at, I coached high school, and then I coached for a couple of years at Chico State, as I was kind of searching. Similar issue as far as supporting a family, and great opportunity with Greg Klink to go coach, and walked into a situation that he and Gus Arginal and Chris Cobb helped build, and this great team. I tell this story because to this point, while we were coaching at Chico State, I got there, and there's a guy who's audience knows, Amir Caraway, who was an unknown on the Chico State team at the time, and certainly a guy from Elk Grove area out here in Sacramento that was a talented but hadn't put it all together, prospect. And when I got there, he was not lined up to be the guy that was playing that position, had just graduated. Coach Klink, Coach Cobb would tell you they didn't know how good he was going to be yet. I got to come in and see him as a guy who had nothing committed to him. I saw the talent, I saw the work ethic, and he and I spent a tremendous amount of time in the gym, and I worked heavily. I took a lot of the stuff that I learned from John Welch while he was coaching me on how to shoot, footwork. Then I was able to basically transfer the knowledge, which was really rewarding to have a kid that I could see was absorbing it, applying it like a sponge, and wanting to get better. And he went from kind of, I don't know if he's, this is the others on the staff, including Coach Klink, we don't know if he's going to play. And me saying, no, I think he's going to be really good. I'm in the gym with him. I'm watching, how many shots he's making out of 50. I'm watching him not only work at it, but I can see, eye to eye in conversations, the way that he's committed to getting better, and just like he wants to be great. He'll accept coaching. He'll focus all of that, and being able to say, this kid's going to be great. And gosh, I think our first exhibition game that year, he's taken threes that he's not even really green lit, but I've been in the gym with him, and it's just he's making them and he's making plays, and it's like he's manifesting belief from everyone else that we created in the gym together, morning after morning, day after day, and all his work. But having an opportunity to do that with a guy was awesome for me, right? It was like sharing what I had been so incredibly lucky to get from Coach Welch. But I say that based on the fact that a lot of guys don't go through that anymore. They have like a personal trainer that they do that stuff with, and then with their coaches, it's just about playing time and within the team environment. And I think it's an interesting dynamic to try to figure out, like, how is that necessarily helping you get better? Part of becoming a better player is getting exposed to new things, being challenged, kind of being forced to do the things you're not great at. And some guys are really good. Some guys and gals are good at like always seeking out their blind spots or their areas where they need to improve. But even if you're seeking, sometimes you can't see it. You need someone to be able to point it out, and you need someone to be in the gym with you or on the field with you or on the mound or whatever, in the batting cages. That takes time to build a rapport with somebody. And if you transfer year to year, how do you really build that rapport? I find that interesting, and I every time I talk with active coaches, and you and I both did it and are out, other than our kids, I think that is a interesting thing to watch going forward. You know what I mean? Like how are kids truly developing personally, but within the realm of how do they compete as a team?
Yeah.
And you can do skill set. I see this a lot with conversations. You can compete one-on-one and develop skills, but how do you actually insert yourself into a team play, a team defense, an offense, and create continuity and all that? So I think it's kind of a fun thing to consider, like, oh man, how much money you could make and how, all that. You and I've talked about it, but there's also just like the purity of being great at the game and really like achieving like that level of success as a group that I don't see a lot of teams that have that in college sports these days. But
did you have a team that you grew up with, maybe your high school team or even like a club team that you played with like over a long period of time? And like, because I had this club team I played for from when I was like U10 to U18, and that core group of players, just we knew each other like the back of our hands. Like we didn't even need to talk, and like that we were like really we molded ourselves into a really cohesive team, and we were very good. And we won a ton of games, and we had a great core group of guys that I'm still friends with today. But did you have anything like that? Because I think that like it takes more than a season to build that, with a team, and it's like those seniors have been through it, right? And they've been through the trenches, and they're the leaders now, and hopefully everyone's following them. But like, as a freshman, you're not quite. I don't think you might be a great individual player, but you might not be fully bought into the system as much as you are when you're a junior or senior. You know what I mean? And it takes.
Yeah, I think the answer for me was high school. It was playing at Jesuit High School. It was, the freshman to senior year, the progression, playing in the summers. Like we played that, like our high school team played a lot of summer tournaments. The high school programs were as important as the AAU programs. Actually, they took precedent over AAU in terms of scheduling.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that was high school. Like even my AAU team had a lot of like, local Sacramento guys that was fun to go from competing against them to playing. The downside, I think, I didn't get as much exposure in the basketball world as I probably would have if I had gone and played for like one of those all-star teams where all the coaches are going to scout.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm able to kind of identify the drawbacks through the careers of some of the stuff that's changed, where I think it would have helped me a lot if the goal was X exposure, if the goal was, in terms of where you played. But in terms of how to work in a team, build that, it was high school. Like it was playing with our high school, team. That was what it was for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have the same thing with my club, and the U.S. national team, just the head coach, he just said something that I thought was pretty profound in terms of like building his team. And it's not necessarily about having the 11 best players on the field at the same time. It's having the 11 right players on the field at the same time. You know what I mean? And I think that's super true with soccer and probably with every sport, that you want those 11 players that are going to form the best team. And often it's not the 11 best players in on your team, right? It might be, someone that just fits a position that needs to be played a little bit better. And that happens in the game. And I think that's a really wise decision by that coach. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the national team can do in the World Cup. And they're starting to really meld as a team. In the last couple of games, they've had really good results. And so, like, just like every team, it takes time, and they're starting to get it right. And I think there's some good leadership there, but the best teams, it might not be all the best players on that team that make the best teams,
Well, that I totally agree with that. And I think you look at sports, there's consistently debate around, and the world is notorious for always focusing on the most glamorous piece of a sport or the role. But looking at sports, the unsung hero, the one on the team that doesn't collect the stats, right? Mm-hmm. And then you'll see different aspects of commentary and analysis around. Take like a Draymond Green with the Golden State Warriors, right? Like his statistics never were going to jump out at you and be Hall of Fame statistics, but the consensus is that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, which I agree with what he's done in the career and the NBA titles. But he doesn't necessarily for sure fit with other teams. He fit perfectly with the guys he played with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and the ability to distribute and pass at that position.
Yeah.
But it's not as glamorous. And so he gets talked about a lot, both with like vitriol and praise and admiration.
For sure.
Because people are trying to quantify the thing that you can't quantify in the same way, and that is like the right guy in the role that isn't going to have the same accolades. And it's like a fullback in football, like a Kyle Juszczyk with the Niners that, has been throughout his career, like the versatile Swiss Army knife that is able to do everything, but his statistics are never going to be what you go look at. But none of the offense works without a guy like that.
Yeah.
And I think, it's definitely a thing that for a lot of guys, I think a message that we talk about with kids, like do what you can do to improve the team, make your teammates better. If you're focused on that ability, whatever your natural skill set is going to probably surface instinctively. But there is because of the glamour, I think a lot of guys fight or resist their chance to insert themselves onto a team and be the role player that plays defense, or that is the guy that's going to set the table for the goal scorer or whatever that is, because they don't think that's going to get them plays. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value in guys who figure that out. For a lot of guys like yourself, you redshirt, you transfer, you play, right? You found a way to be of ultimate value in every team, regardless of how many games you're playing, how many opportunities you got. And then you have guys that burn out or fizzle out because they can't wrap their heads around not being in the exact role they have. And I think that's a hard thing for all athletes to reach. There is a point for everyone. where you hit your ceiling and you are no longer the guy, the greatest, the best, the one that gets all the praise, the shots, the plays run for. Everyone has to figure out how to adapt in that. And it's, I think, a skill set that fundamentally is very, very helpful for life. Figuring out how to adapt and become of value when you aren't the star or the one receiving the credit for it. Soccer, to me, is a sport that I find, besides the fact that there's just not enough scoring, I would like to see more goals. Even when you were in the goal, I like to yell and hope that people would score on you to give you a hard time. Yep, you know, I mean, what are friends for? Yeah. What are friends for? But like, how does that play out on the soccer field, right? Like, you know, a play's developing. What is that unsung hero? What does that guy that sets the table look like on the soccer field?
I think that's a great question, and you're totally right. I coached with a guy in Sacramento, great coach, and he always called offense and defense the beauty and the beast, right? But you can kind of make that reference to the players on the field. Like, you got those players that the high profile goal scoring players, and you know, they're obviously usually attackers, maybe a midfielder that's you know, his job is to create chances. But then you have basically like an outside back or in the center backs, these guys, and like the holding midfielder. You know, there's different types of holding midfielders that'll sit right in front of the back line, and they're either like really good on the ball and they can distribute and spray the ball over the field, or they are just, you know, absolute beasts in terms of like winning the ball back, work rate, and just kind of like that glue of the team, right? They're between the 6 and the 8. So the 6 is that holding midfielder, like we number our positions. And the 8 is, so usually play with 3 midfielders. Like the 10 is the attacking midfielder, the guy that creates chances. And the 8, they call him box to box, because like the 18s are the boxes, and this guy's box to box, meaning he's got to do that running back and forth. He's got to be a part of the attack, and he's got to defend, right? So he's got to be incredibly fit, and he's got to be willing to like put the team on his back and track back 80 yards and make a tackle if he has to
have a work ethic and a grind that's not going to take a play off or 1,000% a sequence off.
Yeah, and those players are super important to allow the attackers to have that freedom to create, right? So, you know, a lot of teams like, oh, we're going to defend with all 11 players. And when you win the ball and everyone's so far deep, there's no outlet. There's no one to play the ball to anymore, you know? So like, then you just have to kick it to the other team, and then you're just underwater, right? And so you got to have that balance where you got to be able to defend with 8 guys, 9 guys, and leave a couple guys to be an outlet for when you do win the ball, you have a person to play to. And so you really have to have a team of players that are organized and know how to work, but there's always these role players on the team that you know, aren't known, but are just the beasts that get the job done. And, you know, they're probably not going to be paid as much. You know, they're just hardworking guys. Maybe they're not necessarily as skilled, but oftentimes they're the captain of the team, right? The captain is usually a player that's more of, you know, a defensive player or a grinder, or just someone that you know, will put the team on their back and make a play when the team needs a play. But you know, like Messi's a captain. Like it's hard not to make him the captain of your team. He's a quiet leader.
As a coach, you would probably do that just to begin with. I assume.
Yeah. But I think that there's every successful team for sure has to have that dynamic of players that can create those chances and score those goals in those moments, but then the players that support them and do that dirty work to allow them that freedom to stay forward.
Yeah, that's a thing. I think a lot of guys, the importance of having a coach that helps you figure that out and then a self-awareness of when that point hits, and then an acknowledgement that even if you think you can be the guy that scores the most points, hits in the third hole on the baseball field, or is the day one starting pitcher, if you're not, do you pout or do you just pivot and find a way to be valuable in whatever role that is? And I think the universal message in sports, if you find yourself in any situation and your approach is, I'm going to be as valuable and as productive as I can possibly be in whatever role I'm given, those are the guys that end up having great careers, long careers, and successful careers, and they're beloved by their teammates. And there's a tremendous amount of guys that when you listen to them talk about that journey, they, had to go through that phase of the recognition that it occurred. And, if there's one message that I think I regularly try to talk to kids about, whether I'm coaching my kids, collegiate kids, talk to high school kids, is to help them understand that, because for a lot of kids, it happens at a really young age, like before. And if they want to enjoy their careers, you're a really good case of you figured out how to be valuable in every situation. And there's a general consensus that if we didn't say it last show, a goalie that is not starting a tremendous amount from the beginning is not likely to end up getting drafted by the MLS and playing, right? Like if you're not the guy, and the idea that, I'm not starting as a freshman at Fresno State, or so I have to go elsewhere, or I will not make it. Like you found a way to be valuable and be productive and to grow, and then end up traveling a path that I'm sure you would probably argue there were guys who maybe or could think of that maybe had more heralded careers as goalies that never ended up doing what you did, whether it be injuries or just that dynamic. And I know I have a lot of former teammates, friends, connections, or guys I know, their NBA careers or their MLB careers was fundamentally attached to their ability to adjust to that whenever that time came.
It's so, I think, if you're a player that hasn't gone through that, that's like kind of, we talked about the transfer portal, right? If you're a player that bounces when you hit adversity, then it's going to be really hard if even if you do make it to the next level, because every athlete hits adversity at some point, and it's like, what do you do? What do you do when you're injured and now you got to be out for 4 months? What do you do when someone takes your job and you're on the bench now? What do you do in those moments, right? And I think it's really important to if you want to stick around, you cannot be a cancer in the locker room. You can't be this woe is me guy. You can't be talking bad about the guy that's playing ahead of you. You can't be, talking bad about the coaching staff for not playing. There are those players and they're gone quickly, so you can't be that guy. So what do you do? I think for me, the option was to be the best teammate I could possibly be, to do everything I could to help the team when I could, and to even make the people in front of me better. My job every day, even if I wasn't playing, I wanted to, goalkeepers, when we're doing a drill, the goalkeepers are all shooting on each other, right? We do shots from angles. We'll do maybe a set, and there'll be 3 shots. So there's only one coach. So the guys doing the shooting are often the goalkeepers, right? And oftentimes, if you're playing against or you're playing with a goalkeeper that is, conniving or something like that, he'll try and score every time, but then he'll miss, and so you don't get a rep, and so it's pretty frustrating when you're playing with someone like that isn't trying to make you better. They're trying to make themselves look good. For me, it was I want to give this guy the best service I possibly can, and then I want to jump in goal. And if he tries to put it in the top corner and score on me, I'm going to try and save it. And I'm going to try and make him better, and I'm going to get better with his crap service. And I mean, I was injured a whole year. I tore my shoulder, and I'm trying to figure out ways to help the team. I ended up like creating travel brochures when the team went on the road because I couldn't do anything. And I like would create, oh, you guys are going to Dallas. Like, here's things to do, like near the hotel. Like, I remember I created this brochure, and I was like, oh, by the way, there's a Diplo concert. If you guys win, you guys should go to the Diplo concert. And they won, and a couple of guys went to the Diplo concert. I was like, yeah, man, I got them, made them have a good time, you know? So like, I couldn't do anything else besides rehab, and that's the only way I could help the team, you know? And it was kind of crazy and stupid probably, but at the same time, like, I just needed some way to help the team. And I think that like goes a long way for, you know, the coaches see that, the team sees that, and they see that like this guy's on our side. He's trying to make us better. He's trying to help us win. Even when he's injured, like that goes a long way. So being a good teammate, because if you hang around long enough, you'll get your shot, right? And that's the key. You got to hang around long enough. And if that means playing a different position, if that means, you know, you're on the bench and you feel like you can't do anything, just get better, try something else, try to help the team in any way you can. And then we get your shot, be ready and capitalize on it. But a lot of guys will, you know, turn sour when they hit adversity, and you know, coaches talk. You know, maybe the coach will get a phone call and he say, hey, you know, you guys aren't playing this guy. What do you guys think? You know, we're interested in him. Coaches will talk, and they'll say, you know, we're happy to trade for this guy. You guys should take him. And then that's like, okay, well, why would I want to take him? Like, well, you know, there's some personality issues, and those issues go around the players, like player to player, like other teams know about it. Like which players are cancers and which players are good dudes. And so like, some advice for anybody that like goes through adversity, you know, if you want to get through it, you have to find a way. You know, you have to find a way to help your team and help yourself, and stick around as long as you can at the highest level, and wait for your shot and then capitalize on it.
I think that's the most sound advice that anyone can give. I think the hard, you know, if I look at what I've over the years kind of identify, people talk about discernment. That's a common, you know, word I identify with. Like, when are you not getting a shot that you are worthy of, and you need to explore an option to get that chance? And when do you need to practice the patience and the focus? I think that is an area where the wisdom of veterans, coaches, and those around you that can give you the right kind of feedback is probably the most powerful, because I think it's very difficult for an athlete who is innately built with this idea of confidence that I can do. Like, you are, in essence, to be great, you have to have an irrational level of confidence, which I've talked about before, and is by no means an original idea.
Yeah.
And irrational confidence also means irrational beliefs about what you should or shouldn't be doing, and how do you consolidate that to an action. And I think it does take the maturity and the wisdom of the input of people who've been through there. I know, like, not having veterans in programs at all levels and in all sports, I think affects the overall team performance tremendously. And I know that's a big conversation that I have pretty regularly with college coaches, right? It's like, how do you create that? NBA has gotten it to be very different from like when we were in our kind of heyday, when I was watching, the Sacramento Kings on their run, growing up watching Michael Jordan. Like, old veterans were like extremely important and valued. Now it's youth and development and growth, but then there's nobody in that locker room to tell the guy, hey dude, you are extremely talented, and yes, you probably could do a lot more if you were given that, but you need to be patient because you are in the right situation and you just need to put your head down and get better.
Yeah.
And reassure them of that. Or, hey, you know what? Yeah, you are ready, and you probably could go explore elsewhere. Most of the time, if you are that far ahead, you will find your way onto the field, onto the court, and into the position you can be. Because if you are heads and tails better, that's the one beauty of sports is there is politics, there is paychecks. The higher paycheck is generally going to play, but if you are heads and tails better than your teammate, your competitor, most of the time that's how it plays out. It may be a tougher road, but you will ultimately win because it speaks for itself and all the other politics goes away.
Yeah, I mean that's it also depends on the coach though, man. Like you would think that at the highest level, but you need a coach to have the balls to play you if you're outplaying someone that is making more money than you, you know.
It's a much steeper path, right? A much harder road.
For sure. You know, if there's, let's say you're making $300,000 a year, you're making an average salary in MLS, for example, and they have a $2 million player that they
or
sign.
Lionel Messi for $20 million.
Well, Messi, like I can understand Messi playing in front of me, like I get it, but like
I couldn't. But
greatest player of all time. Okay, you can play in front of me.
Yeah.
But what does happen is, you know, I was on a, you know, I was in the back room for some MLS for an MLS team, and there is a question when, okay, this guy's training better than this guy. This guy's making $2 million. This guy's making, you know, a couple $100,000, whatever. We play this guy, right? We have to play him because he's making this money. He's going to get the first shot, right? And we're having some success, and it's kind of back and forth. This guy's constantly outplaying the other guy every day in training. The guy making less money. The coach has to think about this. He has to think about, okay, if I take my shot on this guy that's not making as much money and I bench a $2 million player, what happens if we lose? You know, what happens if this guy has a poor performance, right? And especially if the coach is on the chopping block or the coach's job isn't super secure and he doesn't have a history of winning. Maybe he's a first-year coach. Maybe he's a second-year coach. Maybe he's had mixed results throughout his career. Then all of a sudden, what's the ownership going to do when you make that change in a big moment and it fails, right? The ownership is going to be like, we're paying $2 million for this player. You're not playing and we lost. Like, what are we doing? You know? And so that's a legit concern. So you have to have the balls as a coach to be able to stand up to and defend your decision. And it's true that a lot of coaches have that, and they have the power, and the ownership is supports that moment. But there's also, you know, bad ownership that is like too hands-on, and they will question and you know, they will dig and you know, they'll put fear in the coaching staff, and it can be a detriment to the team because all of a sudden now, you know, the best players aren't playing. You know, the best team isn't on the field because you overpaid for a player or something like that. And it happens a lot in MLS where you take a flyer on a guy from South America, a guy from Europe or something like that. And those guys were making good money. Obviously, if you're coming from Europe, you're making good money. So you got to pay this player. And the guys that kind of grow up in the MLS system, you know, maybe you come from college or something like that. You're going to be on, you know, minimum salary. You're going to be on a couple $100,000. You're going to be on the lower tier. So, you know, those flyers will come in and they get those minutes, and it's a challenge for some of those you know, more homegrown players to compete with them, and even if they're doing better than them in training every day. You know, it's an interesting world that I think I never thought about as a player, that I was like, man, I'm better than this guy, whatever, I should be playing. But there is risk for the coaching staff if the ownership isn't super supportive of those decisions.
So in the realm, what's your advice to the guy in that situation in managing that in the approach? How do you both compete, contend for your spot, not allow yourself to be overlooked for an extended period, but understandably recognize the reality of your situation?
Yeah, I think that now there's different opportunities because there's a second team. There's like a whole MLS 2 or MLS Next thing where you can go and get time and get like video and stuff. So even if you're not playing consistently on the first team, like, first of all, be a great teammate, be someone that's coachable, the coaching staff likes, because when that time comes, when you go and play for the second team or whatever, you put together a good catalog, you do well, and you step into the coaching office and you say, I like it here and everything, but I feel like there's just someone ahead of me and I'm not getting the opportunities that I want. And you ask for that trade, then the coaching staff will understand. It's a lot easier for the coaching staff if they like you and they have that relationship and they understand where you're coming from and you have that honest conversation, than if you're a cancer in the locker room and you're just pissing everyone off and you're trying to undermine the coaching staff. So be a good teammate, work your butt off and do everything you can to perform when you get your chances. And then when that moment comes where you have to make a decision for your career, you should have the support of the coaching staff. It's a bit easier conversation, and hopefully you can get them to back you in a trade.
In a trade, puts you in a position where you're getting or they want to help you land in a spot that is going to be optimal for you, things like that.
For sure.
Do you, when you look back at your career, was there a moment in your career where that part really hit you, that this was kind of the role that you were going to have? Or were you always just in the moment trying to accomplish some aspect of making the team better, affecting the team positively, not really looking forward? Because that idea of greatness requires personal goals that by most definitions are selfish, right? This is what I want to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, looking back on my career, I did play for Kansas City for a long time. And one thing that I look back on is I had a goalkeeper coach, and he was my goalkeeper coach in Kansas City for probably 6 or 7 years. It was a long time, and we talked a little bit about, you want to build a rapport with a coach in college and stuff like that, but 6 years is a long time with a coach. And I knew I was too comfortable there. I was too comfortable. I knew everything. I knew every drill we were doing. I knew there was nothing changed. And he was a great coach at managing the goalkeeping unit, but not necessarily a great coach at developing young guys to get better and better and better and hopefully beat out the veteran goalkeeper, right? So thinking back, I probably could have asked for a trade maybe, after a couple of years, but at the same time I had a really poorly timed injury. So right when I probably would have asked for a trade, I tore my shoulder and ended up having to sit out a year. And then that next year I'm trying to prove myself. And then, by that time I was kind of trying to battle with a new goalkeeper at that time. So there was probably, some moments there that I look back and think maybe I should have, tried to go to a different team and see if I could, find another place. But at the same time, I was one injury away. That carrot was right in front of me, for 9 or 8 years or something like that. I was one injury away from being in and getting my shot. So it's hard to sit there and go, I want to trade, when you look around and this team has a goalkeeper that's injured. This team has 2 goalkeepers that's injured, the third strings player. And this team, it's injuries happen all the time. And
you're in the same spot where you've built up deposits, and this is going to be the best place for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was just hoping for that moment where, I don't want to say I was hoping for an injury, but like, I was hoping for that shot to come so I could prove myself, because I was playing really well, I felt like, and I had, the backing of the team and stuff, and everyone was really comfortable with me in goal and stuff like that. And I was a leader on the reserve team and the captain and stuff like that. And I was doing well, but just wasn't getting that one shot that I needed. And I played in like Champions League games and stuff like that. But in terms of like the league games, like it was a long drawn out process before I finally got my playing time.
Finally got your shot.
Yeah.
That is a patience category that translates a lot more easily into life, where the glamour and like what the success role looks like is a lot more muted in most cases. Like who's actually getting the credit and all of that is not as public as being signing autographs and being on TV and that being cheered on by fans. But in the world, like what you're doing today with business and like what are some of the coaching lessons that you take with you and that you use the most and that you apply with your team and in your kind of day to day, even your kids, that like, yeah, if I could give my kids this or my team this, I really feel like this affected me in a way that I want to share, or I think will help us be successful?
Yeah, I mean, for me as a goalkeeper, I was a good goalkeeper, but I was by no means like looking back, I was like, oh man, like I wish I could coach me. I had a lot to say. Looking back at my game film, but I was always a good communicator. We'd have a game plan. I always knew the game plan, and thinking back on the level of communication that position demanded. First of all, the loud ass stadium, everyone's cheering and stuff like that. And, I have a team that's, driving at me, and I have to organize my defense and make sure that things are everyone's in the right position to defend this moment. And then it's a corner kick, and I have to, there's like, the communication is so fast and needs to be on point, and you need to get the point across, and you need to get responses. You need them to and they're tired. Oh my God. It's so frustrating trying to talk to players that are tired. Like a corner kick's like, oh, like the players think they get to rest in that moment. And I'm like fired up trying to like get them organized. Like, no, you don't get to rest. You got to get your mark. You got to get your position. Like they could play it quick. There's a lot of different scenarios that I'm worried about. When a goalkeeper makes a save, you'll see oftentimes, and it goes out for a corner kick, everyone comes to high five the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper's like pushing them away. They're pushing them away because they were so worried about a quick corner and the players not being in their positions. And I remember feeling that way, but that was one thing that I've learned, through my career was how to pointedly communicate with people and get a response quickly. And then, and also there's been moments where I talk to someone the wrong way and I get a bad response, and it hurts me, immediately. So I'd be in training or something like that, and if I screamed at someone for something, maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was this and that, and culturally that's not okay with that person. The next play, they let the person walk right by and score on me, And so now I learned, okay, I can't communicate with that person that way. I have to put my arm around him and make it's a more personal conversation when he makes a mistake or when I need him to do something. I can yell at him like in terms of directions, like shift left, shift right, and mark up and stuff like that. But if there's a poignant, like he was this, like some people are very sensitive, and some people like respond really well to getting screamed at. So one of the things I learned was different people respond to different ways of communication, and you have to figure out those nuances to get the most out of each person.
To me, that's one of the most important things great coaches, great leaders master, right? Is that element. Communication is, obviously 50-50, what you say, what's heard, what's interpreted, but in order to figure that out, you also have to invest the time to actually understand what makes that person tick. Sometimes it's trial and error, right, when you're going through it, but there's also the element of figuring out a way to build a bond with someone, because there are guys that will respond well and do better by getting really pushed, challenged, yelled at, kind of confronted in a very confrontational manner, but only if they have a relationship with you. They have a, and that same situation without the relationship, and it's going to completely backfire.
For sure.
And I think a lot of coaches that don't take those steps find themselves misfiring or not getting the results that they expect with that person. And I think as leaders, learning how to figure that out and do it in an authentic manner and genuinely build a rapport is one of those skills that, I think I've talked a lot about this with like Coach Klink and some others over the years. Like, there are certain traits as a leader you naturally have, like it's kind of an innate ability. And then there's things that you learn over the years in terms of how to express it, right? To effectively get the results. The one that many guys fail at really getting is, I need to invest the time to understand who you are, build trust, make deposits, so that I not only understand what's going to make you react the most optimal way, but it's paired with the idea that if it is confrontational, or what's on the field stays on the field, because we have a rapport off the field that has been built.
For sure.
And I don't know, professional sports has a little bit of like, hey, I come to work, I leave, but the most dynamic teams, leaders figure that piece out. They figure out how to build something beyond, because to really be great, iron sharpens iron, conflict, being forced to deal with the discomfort of being called out, being forced to deal with the discomfort of calling someone out to make each other better, can really become a grinding component that leads to dysfunctional teams. If you don't leave the locker room and go, we're going to go hang out, we're going to go have drinks together, or go have, lunch or dinner, or have those things are important. Like in college, you get to go play video games and, party and do dumb, college kid things.
Yeah.
But there's a very intentional element from youth sports on, where I think teaching kids how to do that and get outside is it's a process. And so where I disagree sometimes with coaches that say like you're either a leader or you're not, is I think there's a lot of leaders that just have not yet learned how to express their leadership in an effective way.
For sure.
Do you have and we're nearing the wrap, and I'm going to put some of our recording episodes in so we can let Chauncey Billups know why his house did not sell.
It's sold, man. It's pending, man.
If you went and toured Chauncey's house and noticed there was a dysfunctional aroma, you can blame one Eric Kronberg for that.
What are you talking about, man?
I don't know either, but give me some of your funniest stories that you can remember from your playing career. And this could be college, so you could throw me under the bus. You can throw any of our friends or teammates.
Funniest
or you can
stories,
go into your
man.
pro career. Funniest stories, like most memorable moments that stick out of what being an athlete did for you and building who you are today. Which there's a lot of words I won't say on the podcast that would describe you, but none of them favorable. But
I don't know. I feel like we should I'm trying to remember back in the day when we were in Fresno. I feel like there was all sorts of stories from. We were freshmen in college, and we
brilliant, by the way, very brilliant. Had it all figured out. Freshman, brilliant, knew it all.
Out. Staying in the Bulldogs, and we had Robert Santos was our other roommate, and
That's right.
He's a funny guy, man. You remember he had like he dipped and he had the big like 2-liter bottles of like dip juice just sitting around that was I still think about like how gross that was. I don't know. It's not really a funny story, but man, funny stories. I mean, the things I think about were like, especially in Kansas City, we had a good culture. We were always, I mean, did I mention, maybe I mentioned this in the last podcast, but we were always just playing like reindeer games. And there was punishments where I think we were on the beach. We had to like flip a bottle or something like that, have it stand. And one guy had to get buried in the sand. And one guy had to, or two guys had to like hold hands down the beach or something like that as a punishment. When I was in Montreal, we had a preseason in Florida, and the whole team went out to Medieval Times, and we all sat in a section, and it was like we had a night out before that. Not a night out, an evening out before that.
That's
so we were, you know, all in good moods and good spirits and stuff. And we sat in the black and white, the black and yellow section, and we were just like the rowdiest section, like surrounded by like kids and families. And it was a great time. Like one of the best, you know, nights out I'd ever had as a player was going to Medieval Times and cheering on the night. And I remember at the end of it, they had the knights like in the little lounge to like sign autographs and meet the families. And we put our knight up on our shoulders and like carried him around the lounge of the Medieval Times. And then we got kicked out by security. But I mean, there's a lot of stories. Most of them I probably, you know, can't tell, but
Can't tell on camera.
You know,
True.
like some of the things I miss most, you know, obviously miss the competition, miss the playing. But looking back, like the locker room banter, you know, just the road trips and you know, you get to like hang out with your boys all day and you get to, you know, play a sport and compete and go to war with them. And that was our jobs. You know, it was, I think a lot of athletes look back and go through a hard time after they retire, because that lifestyle is, you know, so unique and so fun and so exciting. So like, you know, I'm looking back, it was such a great experience. And while I miss it, like, you know, I'm happy with my life now and everything, but, you know, I just listened to someone today talking about, you know, the older you get, the less time you spend with your boys, you know, and that's really true. You know, I love my family and everything, but that's kind of why I'm happy doing this and reconnecting with you and doing these podcasts, just like get to spend some time with my boy, you know, and to hang out again and to catch up and to talk about soccer and sports and leadership. It's a pretty special thing for me. So, you know, I don't really have any like other stories in that, but you know,
I'll get the rest out of you at another date.
We got plenty of time, man. I'm not going anywhere. So the stories will come, you know, we get some guests on here that know me and our history. Well, I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of stories we're going to hear.
They'll poke the bear. Well, I share that. You and I've talked at length about the impetus and the motivation behind this and the desire to share the thinking and kind of translate it. But being able to connect and put the behind the scenes, the things that you can kind of form as bonds, being, you know, teammates, being roommates, those things are hard to replicate. And, you know, as you move forward, staying connected to what it took to build those, you know, I wish that for every athlete is that they have, you know, relationships and teams and coaches that form those kinds of impressions upon them that set them kind of a bar that they, you know, pursue in life for what it means to be a great mentor, what it means to be coachable, teachable, to be motivated, to get better, to be a good teammate, a good collaborator, and what it means to be unselfish, to be disciplined. I mean, all those things. So it's definitely fun to talk. Looking forward to us bringing on a guest that is one that comes from your playing career and probably one of many who showed you were not as good at stopping shots as you wanted to believe. Much like I learned, that I was not quite as athletic or as explosive as I wanted to believe when I would go up heads against Chris Jeffries, which both he and Mel are supposed to be coming on the podcast here soon, along with some of my other teammates. I got to go down to Fresno a few weeks ago to go catch a game and catch up with Coach Welch, who's coaching with Coach Vance Wahlberg down at Fresno State. They did a return to Selland Arena, which was awesome. You came to a bunch of those games at that old arena and catch up with a bunch of my old friends and teammates. So looking forward to keeping the combos up and bringing some more guests on, man. So with that, dude, appreciate you getting your Wi-Fi fixed long enough to put up with an episode, loaning me your time. So thank the family for doling out a few hours of the Kronberg family evening for another episode here of the Triple J Sports Podcast, dude.
Yep.
More to come. We'll keep our guests a secret. Any parting words, my friend?
No, man. It's been fun, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with you and doing some more conversations and kind of diving deeper into the life of an athlete and also that transition from being an athlete to the next stage in life and the drawbacks, the struggles, but also the benefits of that lifestyle from before till after and what you get out of it. So there's a lot to be said, and I think it's an interesting topic that both of us can shed light on, and we can bring more people into the conversation that have been through that, and I'm looking forward to that, man.
I'm pumped, man. The energy creates the energy, dude. So
that's right, dude.
All right. Well, that's been another episode of the Triple J Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Rasmussen, and soon to be co-host, my guy here, Eric Kronberg. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next episode.
Cheers.